Hi, my name is Mr. Evangelista, and today we're going to be talking about speciation. So let's talk about what a species is first. A species is a population of organisms that are able to breed with each other and create offspring, but more importantly, those offspring have to be able to create more offspring. So there are two important components in there. Number one, that they can interbreed with each other, and number two, that their offspring are able to make more offspring. So let's take a look at an example. Here we have a cat, and unfortunately this cat has lice on its fur. By the way, did you guys know that the singular form of lice is louse? I had no idea. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, so this cat has lice, and let's say a buddy comes along. Hey buddy, and unfortunately he gives his buddy some populations of those lice. And let's say playtime is over and his buddy goes away. And so what we have now is the inability for these two populations to breed with each other. And what we get is called reproductive isolation. And the genes are no longer able to be transferred between these two populations because they are what we call geographically isolated. Now, geographical isolation is a form of reproductive isolation. And what this will do is, over time and through natural selection, the lice will become very different from each other and eventually won't be able to breed with each other, and therefore forming a new species. So the geographic isolation created a physical barrier between the lice, and they were therefore not able to reproduce with each other. Now we have other forms of reproductive isolation, so let's take a look at another example. Here we have birds, and what birds like to do is they like to sing to each other. They like to sing to each other to attract mates. So let's say these two birds were separated, and through natural selection, they developed very different songs. Let's say these birds were then reintroduced back together. Well, the songs that they're singing might not be recognizable to each other. It's kind of like they're speaking totally different languages. So here the bird is saying, "You have a face como un burro," which he's trying to be, romantic and hit on this bird. But what he doesn't realize is the other bird is no longer attracted to his song, because in reality he says, "You have a face like a donkey." And so this is an example of behavioral isolation, because the behaviors no longer match the current mating rituals between these two species. Now let's say that we have a population of organisms, and one of them has their mating rituals during the day, while one of them will have their mating rituals during the night. Well, then this is a form of temporal isolation, where the times of the mating rituals might interfere with the ability to pass the genes between the population. So just remember, temporal isolation has to do with time, the wrong time. Now these strange looking structures here are dragonfly male appendages. And you can see that there are variations in the shapes of these appendages, and therefore speciation can happen because certain appendages do not fit into certain female anatomies of other dragonflies. And since these appendages don't fit because of their shape, then we can no longer have interbreeding, and therefore we might get speciation that way. And this is known as mechanical isolation. Now let's say that the appendages are compatible with each other. There's another form of isolation where the gametes, or the sperm and the egg cells, are incompatible with each other. Maybe through mechanical reasons or chemical reasons, gametes are incompatible with each other. And this is known as gametic isolation. Another form of reproductive isolation can be seen with coral. So the way coral reproduces, they will send out their sperm into the currents of the ocean and have the sperm travel through the currents and fertilize other coral by traveling that way. Well, there are many different types of coral. And so let's say the sperm of one coral met with an egg of a different type of coral. A zygote, or fertilization, will actually take place, but that zygote that is made will eventually die. And so we get reproductive isolation in this way through zygote mortality. Now, one last way we can get reproductive isolation is through hybrid infertility. And so with hybrid infertility, an organism is actually made. But we get to that important part of our definition of species where the organism has to be fertile. So in our example here, we have a horse and a donkey. When you breed a horse and a donkey, you get a mule. The horse and the donkey are different species though, because the mule is infertile, which means that the mule cannot produce further offspring. Therefore, we consider the horse and the donkey different species. This same example can be seen in lions and tigers when we create the liger. So the liger is bred for its skills in magic. Hopefully you watched Napoleon Dynamite, otherwise that reference would make absolutely no sense at all. Anyways, the liger is an infertile hybrid between the lion and the tiger. And depending on which one is the male and which one is the female, we can get the liger, and we can also get the Tigon or the Tigon. I'm not really sure how to say it. So if the male is the tiger and the female is the lion, you get a Tigon. And if it's the other way around, you get the liger. So those are the various forms of reproductive isolation that can lead to speciation. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All life on Earth shares a common ancestor. That means that primates, as long as fish, as long as plants,